Welcome back to Succession Stories. I am thrilled to be with my guest today. He is a corporate lawyer with decades of experience working with business owners in connection with growth, transition, financing, generational transfers, all these super complicated things with third-party sales, management buyouts, ESOPs, and general business matters. And from all of that, you can probably guess why I'm having him on the show. He is so knowledgeable. He provides perspective, experience, and judgment to help clients make the best decisions they can with respect to the most important decisions, which for today, we're going to talk about those decisions being decisions about your company. And he helps engineer outcomes for business owners so that they can achieve those objectives. He's a frequent speaker with respect to growth, exit, succession planning, and we met because of the Exit Planning Institute. He's a partner at Dinsmore, chair of the National Growth and Exit Planning Group. And at that firm, he's also a member of the Business Acquisitions and Securities Practice Group. Welcome to the show, Jim Carlisle.
Thank you very much, Laurie.
You need walk-on music for that, right? Like, what song would you actually play? Have you ever given that some thought? What walk-on music would you have?
That's a tough one. Nothing comes to mind that quickly.
All right, we're going to work on that. We're going to work on that. Jim, first question for you is about exit planning. Why should a business owner care about any of the things we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, that's the threshold question with clients is on succession planning. Why should you engage in it? Because it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to cost a lot of money. So why should you prioritize it? And I always start with clients by saying it's actually going to reduce stress and anxiety. Right now, a lot of business owners are walking around with some type of looming anxiety. They might not even realize that it's with them. They don't have anyone to share it with. They don't even talk with their spouses about it, but they don't know how the end will come. At some point, they're going to leave their business. Some people joke that they will leave it either vertically or horizontally, but one way or another, they're going to leave their business. And they don't know what the structure, what the price, what the details are of how that will work. So they hope and they pray that when the time comes, the economy will be such that they can have a successful transaction, that buyers will be plentiful and they can meet their family's needs. But they don't know. So they have that looming anxiety. And if they start with growth and exit planning, they will get on their way where they can see that a transaction is available. They just have to decide when to pull the trigger to activate the transaction, but it's available to them. And also, why should they care? They should care because in the end, they'll do better by planning. They'll end up with a better price. They'll end up with better terms and conditions because they're going to reverse engineer their outcome. So they'll do better in the end.
Yeah.
And
And all of these things are desirable. Why would we want to wait for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's never too early, but it can be too late. So I think you want to get on with it to get that peace of mind sooner rather than later. Like I correlated to, we finally started a basement renovation project at my house. So we built our house 16 years ago, and we thought we're going to fix that up to be an alternate game room living space. Never did it, didn't need to. Our kids are now out of the house. And so we thought, do we want or need to do that now? And we said, well, before we sell our house, someday we're going to fix it up because we'll get a better price. But why wait? Because if we fix it up now, we can use it, we can enjoy it, and then someday we'll sell it and we'll get better terms and conditions on the sale of our house. With the business, it's the same thing. Why not implement the growth initiatives? Why not work out the structure? Why not work out the price and back your way into it? And then for all your remaining days in the business, you're going to have peace of mind knowing that the optimal transaction's just waiting for you to pull the trigger.
One of the things I hear a lot is exit. Oh, that's such a scary word. It's got a finite, nature to it. It's sort of that taboo. Oh, we can't talk about that. And as a consequence, it's in their head. What you were saying, they're very much alone, thinking about things, worrying about things. There's a lot on our shoulders to run a business, and now we got to worry about this exit thing. Oh my goodness, it feels like a lot, right? It feels really heavy. So let's talk about prepping for exit or prepping for transition. As people know, I like to talk about transition. And I think exit is a subset, right? Exit is that moment. It's that moment in time. But transition is over a period of time. And maybe if we soften it up a little bit and say, look, we know that there's a a planning element to this. Where do we start? Where do you start with clients from a exit alternative standpoint? Is that where you start, just to talk about in that reverse engineering idea you shared? How do we frame this?
Before I get into exit alternatives, I start with digging in with the client about what are their objectives. Because it doesn't matter what my plan is for their business, it matters what is the best plan to meet their objectives. For example, some clients might care about protecting their legacy, some clients might care about protecting their community, about retaining their place in the world, about preserving their culture. Some will care about that to varying degrees. So we need to understand that so we can come up with a structure that achieves that. And on the financial side, some clients care to optimize the purchase price, get the highest price possible. Some care to minimize taxes. Some don't care as much about that. They care about who the buyer may be, and they're happier to leave it to relatives or to employees, and maybe not to get the best price, but to get an acceptable price. So investigating all the elements of objectives is the first phase. And then I can start to think of alternatives and planning directions to help them achieve their objectives.
Yeah, so let's just stay on that for a moment. It's about figuring out the best fit based on the owner's objectives. That's so important. Let's start with that as number one, right? We've got to spend time on that. Do you find that owners know what they want, or do we have to pull it out of them?
I think we have to pull it out of them, but they know elements of it. But they've never done this before. Their whole identity in life is much of my clients, the bulk of their life is in their business life. And now you're asking them to envision a world without their business, to envision the next phase, to think about all these things they've never really thought of at the right level, and to make decisions that will impact the rest of their days. So it's hard, but I think you can coach them and tease them in the direction to get their answers. But sometimes it's not a one meeting, get the answers and move on. It's raise the issues, have them think about the issues, and then unpack them in subsequent meetings.
So you gave a couple of examples for what goals might be. Were there any goals that you've heard along the way that really shocked you?
Well, the idea, like minimizing taxes. I have a client now that they'll take less money if they can pay less in tax overall, because they just resent the fact they've had to pay so much in taxes over the years. And on the exit, they want a structure that will minimize taxes when they exit. So that's a big, big deal. I think seeing the degree that clients care about the humans in their lives, their community, their employees, their customers, their legacy. For some clients, they think, I could sell my business and get a boatload of money, but if I can't go into the local grocery store and see my neighbors and my community members that work at my business, and I have to be embarrassed that I sold because the buyer broke up the company and moved it, that's not worth it. So they're willing to accept different terms because they care about the humans that have helped to get them there. So I'm always encouraged by mankind when I hear those considerations, because it's not always just about the money or the taxes. It's the intangibles that creep in a lot of times.
And aligning with the buyer's motivations is, I think, the next part of what you were talking about. How do we reverse engineer? What does that really mean?
Well, so after I understand what the seller's objectives are, then we do look at transaction alternatives. So it might be thinking of, does a sale to relatives make sense? Does a sale to a key management buyout team make sense? Key employee management team. Does a financial buyer, a strategic buyer, does an ESOP? What are the alternatives? And I like to have a plan A and a plan B, so that way, if plan A, for whatever reason, if you're building for a massive third party sale and some world event occurs where lending isn't available or the market dries up, and you're at a stage in your mortality phase where you've got to move on, you've got health issues, you've got to move on, plan B can kick in. And I like that to be where the elements are within the client's control, regardless of outside variables, so they can still get a deal done and move on with their life if they have to. So I like to consider all the various alternatives. And sometimes clients say, I really don't want to hear about, for example, ESOPs again. They'll say, I've heard a lot about ESOPs, It's a highly technical discussion. I didn't enjoy it the first time, and I don't want to go through it again. And I'll say, you got to go through it again. I'm sorry, but I need to know that you understand it and that you've considered it. Because ESOPs, for example, great tax benefits. You may not pay taxes when you sell, and the business won't pay taxes when from the closing day forward. Amazing government subsidized management buyout in a way. So the tax benefits are so great that they owe it to themselves to get educated about it. After they get educated and they say, yep, I hear you, I got it, it's still not for me, I check it off the list and I'll never bring it up again. But I want to make sure my clients fully understand the alternatives. And I've had clients that said that comment about ESOPs at the beginning, ended up doing an ESOP deal. And now if you ask them, they'd say it's the cornerstone of their legacy. They're so happy they did it. But they wouldn't have even considered it if we wouldn't have gone through the range of alternatives. And of course, ESOPs only fit a small percentage of deals, but they're worthy of consideration, I think, on the list for most deals.
It's a great example. Certainly, there's qualifiers. The company has to be large enough to warrant that type of deal. There's transaction costs, and you have to do kind of the ROI. Let's say we aim for 3 years to break even. That would be amazing. And then also the employee census, you can't have everybody retiring at the same time. So there's definitely criteria for certain options. I'm finding, and I want to explore this with you, Jim, I'm hearing more and more from owners of professional services firms in particular, like engineering services and other firms like architecture, that they're interested in their key man or key persons acquiring the firm from them. And you mentioned as one of the options. Here's the conundrum. When we're hiring people, we're not interviewing them to be an owner. We're interviewing them to be a contributor and then eventually grow and so on. What are you seeing? What are you seeing as some of the challenges in addressing this desire from the owner to have succession come from within, ownership succession, with the practicality of that?
Yeah, it's you're right on the mark, Laurie, that if a business owner has a senior leadership team and they've been with him or her for 10, 20 years, so they have sufficient experience to be the designated successors, a lot of times what they're lacking is the entrepreneurship gene, and they don't have the stomach for it. A lot of times they don't have money, real meaningful money to invest. So even if the owner does the financing, the owner is going to want security, or else why are you selling if you're not reducing your risk? And these people, even if they don't produce a lot of money, they still don't have the stomach to put a second mortgage on their house, to sign on to the liabilities of the business. So a lot of times they might be capable technically of doing the day-to-day work, but the other side of it, being a business owner and an entrepreneur, is just not something they're wired for.
Yeah. How do we have those conversations and explore if this is even an option, right? Maybe we have to just jump to option B.
I like to give it fair consideration. So when I go through the growth and exit planning process, one of the action items is to interview the members of the senior leadership team by myself without the business owner, because I want to have a candid discussion where they tell me the pros and cons and their perspectives. And I find out very quickly if these people are really business owners or if they'd rather just be part of the team post closing and maybe have a phantom stock plan or a stock appreciation rights plan where they can be rewarded, but they don't have to be at risk. But I like to interview them and investigate it and then rule it out only if it is able to be rolled out. And sometimes, let's say we start planning early enough and we interview the team, we find out none of them are entrepreneurs. The owner might have an option, if they have enough time before their planned exit to achieve their objectives, to go recruit an entrepreneur to join the team and then maybe to be the leader of the management buyout. And if you got 3-4 years that you can do that and integrate them and they bring the entrepreneurial spirit to the team, sometimes that can be a way to bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's a great point. We talked about timeline, but then I didn't ask you the specific question. What's the ideal timeline to truly start preparing when an owner is thinking about their succession or transition?
So I like to have 3 to 5 years, because if I have 3 to 5 years, we can do the initial plan, we can implement the most impactful recommendations that will change the value of the company. Then we can see tax returns that are filed after implementing those recommendations. So the value is realized on actual filed tax returns. It's not projections, it's actual results. And then the client can get paid for it. But I think, so that's an example. I'd like to have at least 3 to 5 years. But in the perfect world, like I had what I deem one of my most perfect exits. I had a client that came to me with a business plan. We talked about it at his birthday party. We outlined the vision. We talked about the exit alternatives and the exit planning before we formed the entity the next business day and got an EIN number. We worked that business for 9 years and had an amazing exit. And people would say to him, you were so lucky or fortunate that things came together. And it was anything but, because the exit had been planned for the entire lifespan of the company. So it's never too early. You'll just get better outcomes if you go earlier. But at a minimum, you want 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think there's books and movies on this topic of the 10-year overnight success, right?
Right.
And if we set our intention and we create that pathway to have that exit of a certain timing or size, it's more likely to happen. I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it, and we both have worked with clients where, well, we have a shared client. We won't name him by name, but we have a recent shared client, and to his credit, he still has gas in the tank. And I had told him this, and so if he's listening, he'll know I'm talking about him. That he's anticipating a transition with the buyer, and he's excited about it because he still has the desire to stay on, and some owners don't. They want to be out at closing, they want to retire, maybe they have health issues, maybe they're just really exhausted, they want to do other things. And I think that timing on age and life stage could be part of this too, certainly income, but sort of the fun factor of, if we don't wait till the very, very end, we won't be burned out or just looking to retire and do something different. It's a way to have another chapter and engage and have fun with it. That leaves you open to more options. Besides this one client, have you seen that before?
I have. And I think it's dangerous to wait until you're on fumes as far as a contributing human, so we're all going to at some point run out of gas and run out of energy and be less capable. If you wait to turn over your operational control of your business to others and then wait for your exit until you see the signs of that, that's towing a dangerous line, because if you go too far and you die or become disabled before you've worked out that transition, the value of your business may plummet and your heirs will end up with a lot less. So I think you want to do it well in advance when you have gas in the tank, and maybe you can contribute to the buyer afterwards. And you've got alternatives in life, and you can enjoy your retirement and your next chapter with capacity, as opposed to waiting so long that you've got little to offer and you're at massive risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about the legal audit process. I work a lot with clients and they say, where do we start? What do we work on? How do we get our business ready? Your specialty being in the legal field, now you have lots of specialties, but this particular one I think is really interesting. We don't always pull back the curtain and talk about the legal audit process. People are usually excited to talk about other things, but I know you're here to tell us why it's so important and what is it that we ultimately are looking at or working on.
Well, I'll start, Laurie, and say, exit planning done well, I think, is one of the very hardest things that can be done, because it's multidisciplinary. It involves the most evolved thinking by many professionals contributing and collaborating to achieve an outcome. So when I do the exit planning process, I view myself as a general contractor that I'm running the process, but I'm also a subcontractor when I'm doing the legal work as well. So on the legal work side, it's our job to do legal due diligence as if we were a buyer of the company. So we start with the most involved due diligence checklist that a buyer will produce in the future related to the business. And we get all the documents, we study the documents, we set up a virtual data room, and we find the problems and the issues. We vet them, we fix them, we clean them up to the best that we can, and then we create our discussion points related to everything that we can't fix, because it's just inherent in the way that the company's built, so we're prepared. And then when the process moves on past that to transaction structuring and finding a buyer, and then ultimately you have a deal, when the buyer's doing due diligence, we're not surprised by anything. We know the company better than the owner does, And we now are ready to engage in a full discussion about every single point. And a lot of things that happen with buyers is they issue a letter of intent, they do due diligence, and then the price comes down and the terms get worse because of what they find. We try really hard through the legal audit process to uncover all the problems, fix them. So through that process, it goes faster, it's less expensive, and there aren't issues that pop up that drop the price.
Are there any common problems that you see that are identified in the legal audit process?
Yeah, so oftentimes you'll find that employees are not bound by employment agreements or related agreements. So they're not subject to ownership of work product or confidentiality or non solicitation or enforceable provisions that relate to non competes, depending on the business. And if you can lock down your people, you have that much more to sell because you have key employees being retained and being restricted that they can't go and compromise the value of the business. So sometimes clients don't have that in place, and sometimes their customer contracts don't permit assignment. So all of a sudden you're moving towards a closing, and the structure of the deal means that you have to go get consents, and you're asking for consents with limited leverage, and it delays the closing and might compromise relationships. And then a very common one is you go through the minute books and you find clients haven't done board minutes or shareholder minutes like forever. So you have to, document what you can and catch up the records so that things are in good order. The stock ledger makes sense and things like that, following the threads and making sure that everything is clean.
Breadcrumbs,
Yes.
ultimately. When we chatted about topics to discuss, we also talked about the emotional side of exits. You're the lawyer, you're the rational guy, but at the same time, I know you have a big heart and I know your clients trust you. What are some stories that you might be able to share that paint that picture of the human condition?
Well, for example, we had a large manufacturing company in a different part of the country, and they started to realize that their top executive leaders were starting, like I was talking about before, starting to lose gas, having health and medical issues. And they knew that the next generation of leaders weren't ready. And they had expanded into many additional regions in the years before, and they saw that there was increased competition. So we looked at, when we played out the future, it was a family business, and the family business was likely not to become, that business was not likely to become the future family business. So we talked to them about the family business doesn't have to be this business. You can get the liquid proceeds and invest and have a family office and have real estate and other things. It doesn't have to be this business. So what you have to do is to try to separate the emotion of the situation and to think, what is best for your heirs? Is it better to leave them with liquidity and to exit at the right time? Or is it better to be stubborn and try to hang in there on this business despite the fact there's going to be a gap in executive leadership and you're likely going to get beat up a bit by competition? And that particular issue required getting a family business consultant involved, because I am in tune with many of my clients, but I also recognize when I reach the boundaries of my expertise, and there needed to be discussions that I felt like I just wasn't the best person to lead those. I contributed, but I felt like we needed a different leader. And we brought in an expert that helped to frame the issues, and he was great at that. And we got by it, and they ended up selling the business, and they have very successful pods of family businesses across the family. But it was an emotional struggle to deal with the reality that the very best thing may be to sell what it was probably deemed to be almost sacrilegious to think to sell before, but it was the best route.
Yeah. Can be really emotional for family businesses because it's the business of the family too. What about the founder who this is their baby? Have you seen they just don't want to let go emotionally?
Well, founders have to really play out their next chapter, and they have to be ready for it. And I go back to the owner's objectives. So when the owner's telling me about what they care about, I try to really dig into what the next chapter is, because there's an overwhelmingly high statistic of sellers of their businesses and their degree of happiness after. And it's a really low percentage of sellers that are happy in the short term or long term after they sell, because they end up not being prepared for their next phase. They don't know what they're going to do, and everybody needs meaning and purpose. So I try to dig in with them. If you're going to stay connected to the business, how? What are the other aspects of your life that we should start to trial balloon now? Do you really want to golf every day, or do you need more? And if you do, let's try it. Let's figure those things out so that you can wake up with purpose and have a next chapter that matters to you. Because if not, sometimes it's a sobering reality. You go from 300 emails a day, many social engagements, people calling and wanting and needing things from you on a very regular basis, to that all stops, and you're not influential anymore in their worlds, and it stops. And if you're the kind of person that's wired to that excitement and to that level of interest from other people, it can make you sad that that phase of your life is over if you don't prepare for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming on the end part of the show, and I like to recap because we always cover a lot of things. So, in your perspective, if there's three things that you want our audience to take away and have an intention and go work on, what are those three things?
I would say number one, get started on your growth and exit planning right now. I mean, regardless of where you are in the phase of your business, start working on it and find a professional to lead the team and assemble a team to work on the project, because this will be the first time you're going through it. You should have a professional team to steer you through it. And I think you'll look back that if you say, in two alternative universes, one, my business has this team and works on this for 5 years, and in the other, I do nothing. Where am I at the end of the 5 year period? You'll be remarkably ahead if you start. So I would start right away. That's the first one. The second one I would say is identify and take care of and lock down your key employees, because your key employees are the route to the future. They represent a reduction in risk to future buyers. And a lot of times owners are so proud that the business is dependent on them, but that means that the business is worth less. Find, retain, compensate, and lock up in the appropriate agreements your key employees, because owners will really, really care about that. And then I would say play out the third one would be play out your transactional alternatives. And I mean down to the minutia. Study them, get a plan A and a plan B, and work it out down to where you get to your net after tax proceeds. And you understand the script for each one. And then you can be ready with your hand on the ripcord, that you can pull it whenever you want. But you don't have to. You can walk around each day with peace of mind, knowing that things are in order. And if you need to, you'll pull it, but you don't have to, and you can end on your own terms and with control.
Love it. That is awesome. I didn't ask you this in advance, so if you don't have it ready, that's okay. I usually ask people if they have a favorite quote, and maybe something that inspires you about entrepreneurship or just being, a leader. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I have one from a strange source. It's from, I think where I heard it was on House of Cards with Kevin Spacey. And he said something like, if you don't like the way that the table is set, overturn the table. And I've had a lot of great mentors over my career. And one of my early mentors had a very creative way of approaching projects. And if it looked like our clients had things stacked against them, he never gave up there. It was just regroup, rethink, be creative, be resourceful, and find a different way, because there's a different answer if you just approach it differently. So don't accept the outcome, apply some ingenuity, turn over the table, set up new ground rules, and march forward.
I love it. That's a great quote. Jim, if people want to get in touch with you, what's a good way for them to find you?
So my email is good, which is just jim.carlisle@dinsmore.com. And my mobile phone is probably the best, which I don't mind giving. So it's 412-855-4333.
Ah, awesome. All right. We'll also have the links in the show notes. So, Jim, thank you so much for being with me today on Succession Stories.
Thank you, Laurie. I really appreciate it.
And to our listeners, thank you. We appreciate you so much. If you want to see this video and all of our other videos from not only Succession Stories, but the Entrepreneur Gene, be sure to check out and follow our YouTube channel for the Business Transition Sherpa. And so we appreciate you listening in today. Be sure to like and follow this show so you get all the episodes. See you next time on Succession Stories.